Hi folks, I'm back with another video. This time it's about openmediavault, and I know it's been a little while since I did my last video, but I'm hoping I'll explain some of the challenges I've had. openmediavault itself is not actually very complicated to set up, but I think maybe just due to the way I was trying to use it, that was probably why I added a few complexities that other people probably won't actually have had. But let's just start off with what actually openmediavault is. It is effectively a network attached storage device. So why I got it is because my old D-Link box, which had 2 drives in it, had packed up. It had some issues after about 9 or 10 years of running. So I had to think about what I'm going to put in place. And I didn't want to go and get another proprietary box where if something breaks or something happens, how do I replace it? I've got to replace the whole thing essentially. So I looked at openmediavault. I was looking at free NAS, but free NAS doesn't run on a Raspberry Pi, and there were 1 or 2 other things. So I thought, okay, then openmediavault possibly is what I'm looking for. It does run on a Raspberry Pi, which is what I was originally intending to do with it. It also runs Docker containers and a lot of other plugin functionality that it's got. So it really was ideally suited. There's a lot of things you can do for it. So it's not just the storage. You can run, there's a good 80 plus different Docker containers that are very easy to install, sort of one click, whether it's search functionality or backup functionality, websites, Nextcloud, anything. There's a whole lot of things you can actually run inside, utilizing the storage that you've already got. So my original plan was to actually have a Raspberry Pi, and I can just show you the image here. This was sort of the idea I had. This is the old D-Link container box, and I thought, let me use that because it had place in it for the 2 drives. Those are my 2 new 4 terabyte drives on each side. And the idea was to actually set it up with a RAID and have the Raspberry Pi on the inside and then just put the containers front on, and I'd have a nicely contained 1 box setup. But what I quickly realized is there's 2 things here. Firstly, the USB 3 that I wanted to connect, I had 3.5-inch hard drives. So first of all, what I discovered is they are not going to sit on plain USB 3 connectors into the Pi, because the 3.5-inch drives want dual 12 volt as well as 5 volt power, which means I would have had 12 volt adapters also hanging off this, and that really wasn't what I was looking for. So what I first of all learned was that if you want to have something connected purely on a USB cable, which is just a plus 5 volt, it's either got to be an SSD drive or it's got to be a 2.5-inch notebook drive. So what you're seeing here is 2 notebook drives, 2.5-inch drives. They will be powered exclusively just by the USB cable. The next thing I was a little bit concerned about is that these are hard drives. They are not SSDs. So again, now where you're sitting with another issue is that the Raspberry Pi, it's not ideal to power them directly off a Raspberry Pi. It was not designed really to do and run multiple hard drives from a power perspective off the Raspberry Pi board. So this basically led me to the next thing. Okay, I'm going to have to really, well, I didn't have to, but let me use something else. There was another alternative. I could have bought a RAID enclosure and put the USB drives inside there, or put the drives inside there, SATA drives or whatever, and powered it separately off that. But I was looking to do it with as little as possible. I wanted to use what I've already got. So in the end, I just bought the 2 hard drives, and I ditched the Raspberry Pi in the end. I'm going to use this for home automation rather. And what I ended up with is I used an Intel NUC that I had, a spare Intel NUC that was around. So what's now happened is you can see I've put the cover on the D-Link on the enclosure. Inside is just the 2 hard drives, and what's peeking out the back is the 2 USB cables that the NUC is now happily powering without a problem. So yeah, that's in essence then really what I've done from the hardware setup and how I came about to be using the NUC with these particular drives. The next thing I discovered was that when I got into, and I'll show you just now when we go into the openmediavault setup, It's also not by default anyway. You cannot run the 2 drives in a RAID array. It doesn't want to create a RAID. It says to you USB is too unreliable. I had a little bit of a look into this. Yes, there is a way of doing it. You can go to the command line. You can create the RAID from there and sort of force it to use it. But I've heard there's all sorts of issues with powering the RAID up. You've got to delay it so that everything else powers up first. Then it can't see the Docker images. There are ways around that. But, I'm a bit concerned. The idea was with this whole thing is if I had any problems, I want to do easy recovery. I don't want to have issues and hassles with recreating the RAID and doing other things. So I decided in the end, you know what? Let me just keep it simple. Let me have the 2 hard drives connected. And what I'll do is I'm going to use a scheduled RSync inside openmediavault to sync from drive 1 to drive 2 once a day. So that gives me a slight delay, and I can show you now how it's set up at the moment. I've got all my individual devices using the drive share for drive 1. That's all they can see. They are seeing it. These are Windows machines. I've got my wife's Windows 10 machine as well as her laptop, and I've got one Windows 10 laptop. They are just using plain old Windows 10's backup, built-in backup function. They've got a drive share seeing drive 1, and that's all they're doing. They're just backing up all their data and their crucial files. Whenever they're powered up, they will do an automated backup to drive 1. My Linux machine, which is about 1 point something terabytes of data, that is using an application called Lucky Backup. And I have got Lucky Backup doing just a RSync scheduled backup at 1 p.m. every day through to openmediavault to drive 1. Now this in itself, this is where I had a lot of complexity. It took me about a day or 2 to try and sort all this out, and mainly because I was trying to do an RSync share. The Windows machines are fine. They're using CIFS or Samba share, so they're not a problem. But for the Linux side, I want to make sure I'm backing up the permissions, the ownership of a file and everything, so that when I do a restore of any one file or all my files, it comes back to Linux exactly as it was. So the RSync for me was a bit of an issue. Nothing to do with openmediavault, but on Manjaro Linux, there's quite a lot of issues trying to get the certificates set up. In the end, I had to go with passwordless certificates, mainly so I didn't have the prompts popping up, because remember, this is automated. It happens in the background. I don't want to have to sit and fill in the password every time I have an automated backup happening. So that and the drive mapping was a little bit of a complexity. It took me a good day or so to try to figure out how to get that all to work seamlessly without any pop-ups, without any issues. As this is all in an internal LAN, I wasn't too worried about the passphrase for the certificates. So in the end, I ditched them. I've got the certificates, but I'm not prompting for a password anymore. So everything is backing up at the moment to drive 1. And then within openmediavault itself, it at about 3 a.m. nightly, it is doing an RSync of everything that's on drive 1 across to drive 2. So yes, RAID would have been a live, call it a live mirroring. But the disadvantage with this is, of course, is if something was lost or corrupted or something over here, I'd have my first backup at about 1 p.m. And the problem is that it would overwrite the same error or deletion onto drive 2. So in a way, the staggering is quite a good thing, really. So there's a bit of a delay. Once a day, I've got this happening. And then the following morning, that secondary backup is happening. The advantage I've got is all the files are fully visible. I can check the files in drive 1, drive 2, double check and make sure the files are there. And if I want to restore, I can just open it and I can copy the files back that I need to. So for me, in a way, this is working quite well. There's lots of ways of doing it, and you'll find that OMV or openmediavault is very, very customizable. So there's a lot of different ways you can sort of skin the cat. And I think that flexibility is quite important, but you've got to find your way of doing it. So for me at the moment, it's working very well. So let's have a look at openmediavault itself. I'm not going to go through the whole how to set up openmediavault. There's plenty of videos that are doing that. And I will leave a link below this video on my YouTube video channel. I will leave a link to one or two that I've used quite extensively in terms of seeing how various things happen. So I'm going to really just go through some of the setup and just show you some of what I've got here. I'm also going to cover for you why in the end I didn't use Duplicati or UrBackup. I was originally quite set up on using the unlimited backup functionality to Backblaze, and that's what Duplicati would have done for me. The problem was I discovered that that was only for the personal account, that is the application running on your computer, not for your NAS drive. If you want to do the NAS type backup from Duplicati, then you've got to be using the business account, which is the pay as you use it. And I thought, oh, you know what? That's not really where I wanted to go again. So I'm still doing Spider Oak backup from my computer to the cloud. And I've ditched the plan to go to Backblaze at the moment. If you've got one computer only, you know what? Still the way to go. $5 a month, unlimited backup. But yeah, that was why I didn't go for that. And the UrBackup is, let's have a look quickly. I can just show you. This is the UrBackup application. So I've got it still active at the moment on my openmediavault. But and you'll see there was my desktop setup and my laptop setup. And UrBackup was working quite nicely. The only thing is, and it's nice because it monitors your backups. It warns you by email if you haven't backed up recently or anything's happened. But you know what's worrying me is it wasn't working so well from the Linux side. It backs up, but I can't see the files. The restore, it wasn't that clear to me how the restore works. I mean, the advantage why I liked UrBackup was because it could do full imaging. But it seems to be it only does the imaging side for Windows computers, not for Linux computers. And the restore, it wasn't as the way I want to do restores. I couldn't see easy ways of actually accessing the 2 or 3 files and just restoring them. It's got a way it pushes it back to the machine. You know what? I prefer RSync. It's just a simpler, easier setup. I can see exactly what's happening and I can restore exactly what I want to. So in the end, I didn't go with, it's actually called UrBackup, I think, not UrBackup. But anyway, there it shows you the activity. It's got very good monitoring activities and so on, I must say. You know, it's not a bad looking package. It's maybe something, maybe I need to spend a real bit of time and go through it and sort of have a look and see. The restore what was worrying me, that was all. So in the end, that's why I didn't go with it. This is Duplicati. Now Duplicati is the one where you can set up backups. There was 2 ways I was trying to do it. Backblaze, the idea with Backblaze, like I said, was going to be to do this unlimited backup to Backblaze, but that's only for personal accounts. So guess what? That wasn't going to work for me. So again, it monitors, it tells you when it backed up, source data. You've got a lot of configurable options. So I had set it up initially to do drive 1 to drive 2 replication, but for some reason I didn't go with it, and I actually can't remember why. It is quite nice in that you can encrypt the backups, not necessary for me on site. You can choose the location. It's obviously a local drive, but you can back up to a lot of options here. FTP over the internet, S3, remember it can encrypt. OpenStack, you've got various of these proprietary clouds, and you'll see there it's only the Backblaze cloud storage option, not the private backup. Dropbox, Google Drive, Jota Cloud, various others here. So it's, and again, you can just pick the directories or sources that you want to use. You can schedule the backup, and you've also got options, the chunk size that you're really going to be using. So the advantage with this would be, this is why Duplicati is perfect for backing up across the internet or to cloud. It does a differential backup on sort of block size. And in essence, it's chunking your data up into these blocks. So even if it's a 1 gigabyte file and there's only smaller portions of that file have changed, it'll only be backing those up. And you can, of course, keep snapshots or versions of the data as well. So Duplicati is a very, very powerful option for doing cloud backup. But again, for what I wanted to do here from drive 1 to drive 2, the built-in RSync was for me better. I will try and minimize the number of containers and Docker images and so on I'm running if I can, and keep it to the basics in OpenMediavault. So I think, yeah, let's go and look at openmediavault itself. These are all the various options you've got. The page I'm on at the moment is the dashboard, which should be here. So the dashboard is just telling you which of your services are actually running. I've got failed to ban install at the moment. It's enabled and running. I've only got, you'll see I haven't got RSync server running. Server would be if you're using openmediavault to RSync elsewhere. So the only sharing services that I've actually got running is SSH, that's for my lucky backup on Linux, and the Samba shares for the Windows machines at the moment. Obviously there's a bit of system info. You'll see it really idles during the day, memory usage, if there's updates available. And then these are the file systems that I've got running. That's the boot drive for openmediavault. There's hard drive 1 and hard drive 2. And you'll see they're roughly the same at the moment. Let's just go through a couple of options though. Yeah, there's my SSL certificate, self-signed certificate. I'm using port 81 at the moment. Obviously your date and times, and you can tell it where you want to sync the date and time from. You can activate monitoring. I've got the basic activating, and you'll see also, I just want to see no scheduled jobs over there at the moment. There's your certificates. So I've got SSH set up, and I've got the self-signed certificate. SSH, to set up your private keys, this is where you'd be going in. You'd be adding it over here, the public key, should I say. You don't have to go to the DOS prompt to do it. You can do everything really within openmediavault. These are the scheduled jobs I've got, and you can put notes on them and everything. So daily, just want to check there. Yeah, I'm just doing the backup daily, and I've got a daily backup and a weekly backup. There's your update management. Again, not from the DOS prompt. You can do everything from here. You can do your check, your installs and everything. The plugins, these are okay, there's a couple of additional plugins because I have installed the OMV extras. So I've got a few extra plugins that appear here now. These are all OMV plugins. So typically things like the OMV backup is a plugin. You'll see it over there. There we go on the left. It's appeared. Borg, RSnap, USB. I included flash memory that was originally intended for the SD card on the Raspberry Pi. It's just to reduce the writes to disk. And I just want to see what else I've got installed here at the moment. There's ZFS file system as well, but again I decided just to keep it simple and go with ext4 journaling system with Linux. It's a Debian based openmediavault server. There's the fail to ban I've got activated. It just bans IP addresses if people are trying to guess passwords. That is the OMV Extras plugin, and then this appears. You need to install this, the OMV Extras, to get Docker and containers running. The resets permission is recommended as well. That actually did catch me at one stage. For my SSH, when I was trying to install it and get it running, I realized also there was a permissions error. So it took me quite a while to figure that out. You've got to be careful. Permissions in Linux, that's often the thing where it trips you up, where it says it can't do something. You've got to go figure out where it's trying to write it. And then you'll see, you know what? My user doesn't have rights to write that particular file or directory. And that's what the issue is. So there is the backup. This is the backup that runs at the moment. And I think it's backing up to hard disk 2. And you'll see it's a daily backup. And you can say if you want email sent or not. So this is actually what is doing my backup. This backup is not the data backup. Sorry, I should just explain. This is the backup for the OMV's own file system and settings and config. So this is running separate from the data backup. So that is backup. We can just look at disks quickly. Again, that's my SSD that's in the NUC. It's the boot drive. And then I've got hard drive 1 and hard drive 2. Something interesting I can show you here as well is Smart. So Smart is another thing. It's enabled or it works fine with SATA connected drives. But one thing that I found out is it wasn't showing me it wasn't reporting the smart functionality for the 2 USB connected drives. So for that to be fixed, I had to run something, and I'm just trying to remember where it was now. It might have been on the command line. I'll put a link as well below the video. But there is just something you run to force smart on for USB. I think it's a Linux thing mostly. And remember, this is a Debian Linux system. So there is some issue about the reliability of the USB information. So by default, it's deactivated in Linux. All you've got to do is you've got to activate it once from the command line, and there up came the status. And I tell it to run a few scheduled tests as well. It's doing a daily short test, and then once a week it does a long test for each drive. So all these things are not insurmountable. You can get around these problems. So RAID obviously I didn't do, and you'll see if I say create here, and you go to mirror, you'll see devices. I think it'll say here, well, you've got to select 2, but their USB will not be listed due to unreliable. So obviously, if you have gone and force created your RAID at the command line, it will already appear here. You won't have to manually, we won't have to go and create the RAID within openmediavault. Then the file systems, again, that's my boot drive, and hard drive 1 and 2 just got ext4. It shows you size, they're mounted, they are referenced, and they are online at the moment. That was the flash memory option that I'd taken. I don't have any groups at the moment. There are some shared folders. So what I am sharing is data, is hard drive 1. I've kept it again very simple. I haven't done it on per user, per everything basis. I have taken a data shared folder, and I have got a backups one on the second drive over there. All the users are seeing is HD1. They don't need to see HD2 because it's backing up from the system side. What is interesting is you do have a couple of additional options here that you can by default set read and write for the accounts. But the interesting one is the level. There's a more detailed control level you can set here. So on a per user basis, I've given read write to the individual. Under data, I've got app data, one user, another user, and I've got backups. So I've allocated writes specifically to the users for their own directories that they're sharing to, and that's where I set it up. Then let me just see, where are we? Yeah, failed to ban. I've got failed to ban set up. I've whitelisted a couple of my IP addresses. I've activated it. These jails, it's activated for web interface and SSH at the moment. I don't have FTP and NFS and so on set up. The RSync, what's happened here is on RSync itself under services, I have scheduled, this is where I've scheduled the backup to backup from the source, that one data share file system, to the destination, which is backups, which is on the second drive. So it's backing up at 3 a.m. daily at the moment. That's where that happens. I just want to check. I think, yeah, that's all we can see there. Yeah, the server is not enabled. And then there is the share, the Windows shares at the moment under Samba. That's SSH itself. It's enabled as a service. That was for my Linux machine to write. And you'll see I've enabled public key authentication, but I have disabled root login, and I've disabled password access to it as well. The dashboard we've already seen. It's just got system info as well. And you can also look at processes that are running. You can look at performance stats, CPU usage, disk usage. Oh, and the disks, of course, are here. So that was my boot disk. That is the first data drive. You can see its performance, and then that's the second drive in openmediavault. You can look at load averages, memory use, the network traffic on the interface. Also give you an idea, of course, when your bigger backups are running as well. And of course, uptime stats for openmediavault itself. It's only been running probably 2 weeks or so now, I think. And there are also reports that you can refresh and download over here as well. Then we've also got system logs. So what is useful here is these are the various logs. You can quick select the logs and then have a look. Like if you want to have a look at, say, the smart settings you can set. I've set for hard temperatures, over certain temperatures, to give me warnings. But you can also set for differentials temperatures. Fail to ban logs. Authentication logs. So there's quite a lot you can look at there. Those are just the services again we've seen running. And yeah, information and donate. I can just have a look here under smart. You'll see, I think somewhere there's smart warnings. I don't know where. But the probably more exciting part, so this was just the storage and the backup part on its own, really. There's no, the functionality and the extras has been moved outside of plugins. You'd actually go to OMV extras. So Docker has already been installed. It's 1 or 2 clicks you press here, Docker installs. And then I'm using Portainer to manage and install the Docker images and the containers themselves. So not much really to see here, but you'd click and you'd go to Open Web. And if you click Open Web over here, it's going to basically open Portainer. So this is the Portainer screen. This is the dashboard you're going to get for Portainer. And what I can show you here is it's got a couple of, these are the built-in templates. So I did install Whoogle from here, but you'll see, and you can also organize them here by category. There's quite a few categories. I'll scroll down so you get an idea of what's in here. Let me just see here. So we've got Jellyfin Kodi over there for media. Let's Encrypt. Maria Database. Mind Test. Murmur, that's audio. Music Brains. I just want to check. Nextcloud, which is now a whole file sharing and collaboration platform. So what you would do is you could actually install that here. You could just set up some of the basic information that you need to, provide passwords, what port you want to use. These would be the user ID and group ID on openmediavault for your admin user. And basically you'd say deploy the stack. It's as simple as that. It'll run through its whole installation then. So these are the template-based ones. Nginx, web server, OpenVPN access server. You can set up your own OpenVPN. Photo show, Bookstack, Caliber Web, Couch Potato, DuckDNS I am using, so I'll show that to you just now as well. There's Duplicati, what I mentioned a bit earlier, a file browser, ERP system for your kitchen, Pwego. I'm using Pwego on outside hosting that I'm paying for at the moment, and I might very well bring that internally for all my photos. I mean, it's 10 gigs of photo. It'll fit perfectly on here, and then I've got my own backup in-house. Plex, Proton Mail Bridge, UTorrent. Let me just see. Sonar Sync Thing is another backup, RSync backup replicator. Another OpenVPN. There's Tiny RSS reader, news reader. There's Whoogle. So I'll show you Whoogle in a few secs. So that's the one way you'll install Docker containers. And then the other way is through stacks. So these are the ones that I've actually got installed. How you'd add a stack, you go to add stack, and there is another site. I'll also put its link below. I think it is Leisure Linux or linuxleisure.io. It's got script files that you copy, and you basically just paste them in over here, and you edit the 1 or 2 details again, like password, port number, and group ID and user ID that you've got to put in. And you also just click over there, deploy the stack. That's it. What happens after that is, once you've created the stack, it'll power up the containers and say that they're running. So for example, there I've got Whoogle running in a container. I've got UrBackup and Duplicati still. I'm going to remove those. Duck DNS I set up, and then Portainer itself was already set up as the default. How you'd access them, so Whoogle, for example, it's running on the same IP address as my openmediavault, and it's running on port 5001. So if I was to go to my browser now and I type the IP address in, and I just put port 5001 on the end, I'm going to see port 5001. Okay, so that's Whoogle. Whoogle is now running as an application inside openmediavault. And I can access it anywhere on my LAN. If I was to use port redirect on my router and I came in from outside using a DNS name or the IP address and I used port 5001, it would point through to Whoogle as well. So I can access from the internet if I need to actually. You can type there, what is Whoogle? Search. And in essence, Whoogle is giving you, it's a anonymized usage of Google search. So I can point all my search engines on my browsers through to this address, and I won't be pointing to Google. What goes out and comes back from Google is fully anonymized. So yes, there are things like DuckDuckGo as the online anonymous search engine, but if you use, say, Whoogle, you could have your own search engine that you're running inside your house or for your family or friends. So that's in essence how Whoogle works. And you've got the same images here at the top with categories. You've got videos, news, and so on. You've got a basic configuration you can set up here, like language. You can say, because remember, because you're anonymized, it'll pass through there. Yes, I'm near Cape Town or San Francisco or whatever London or whatever the case is. You can click Save Search on and off, and that's my root URL in the house. So let's go back to Portainer. So Whoogle, as I showed you now, is just one of the containers that's running inside of openmediavault, and it's as easy as the IP address and the port number. I've already actually shown UrBackup and Duplicati. Duck DNS is just configured and running in the background at the moment. So what I can also just show, we have a site, fleet.linuxserver.io, and this is actually listing numerous Docker images that you can use for installing very easily. Like I showed a little bit earlier on openmediavault, it's literally like 1 or 2 clicks. So you'll see some that were already in those app templates a little bit earlier, but there's numerous others here that were not listed there. For example, there's Digicam as well, the photo manager. Double Commander we saw, Duck DNS we saw, Duplicati we've seen, but there's numerous other ones here that you can also install. So it just gives a feel for the sheer number of other applications you could run. So obviously it's just going to depend on the amount of CPU and storage and memory and so on you've got on your openmediavault server. Hence why, again, a small Raspberry Pi might not handle a lot of these. Sync thing over there, the lounge, WireGuard, Wireshark itself. So if I took one of these, let's just say, is Nextcloud on this one? No, but say we could take anything actually, say Music Brain. You'd basically go in here and you would copy the Docker Compose, and that's what you would then go and paste in on your openmediavault to actually deploy that container. We don't have to make use of the command line interface. You can actually do it all from within openmediavault. So yeah, that's sort of openmediavault in a rather big nutshell. It does a lot. It really does a lot. So as I said, the one half of it really is to do with all your backups. You've essentially here got a server running with either a RAID array or one or more or multiple drives that you can back up, which means that the amount of the data that you've got here is relatively safe as it stands. If you've got any of the other cloud storages, you could be auto backing up into the cloud as well. And as we've also seen now, you can run various Docker images with services like Nextcloud or Duplicati or other things within openmediavault itself, or your photo management or whatever the case is. So the whole thing becomes your network attached storage, but also can run various services, backing up that data and even replicating the data outside to the cloud. So in many cases, for some homes, this might be quite sufficient for family sharing and hosting of files versus going out on the internet and paying for a service over there. So yeah, I hope you found it interesting. If I discover anything else sort of more interesting around openmediavault or any other usages that I'm using it for, I'll do another shorter video maybe just on that particular service. That's about it. And you guys must all stay safe out there. And I'll see you in one of my next videos.